Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. I am honored and privileged to be picture in picture with a coach that is no stranger to Wake Up Call, and that is Rhett Lashlee, the head coach of your SMU Mustangs, and they are following an 8-1 start and a 5-0 start inside of the ACC in their first year in the ACC. I have covered SMU for, I would say at this point, probably around a decade, if not more, in the entire time that Rhett has been there. We've talked in the American, and we've also spoken now in the ACC. And Rhett, you are doing a tremendous job, but before anything, good morning, and how are you?
Hey, good morning, Dan. Always good to be with you, and always good to be playing meaningful games in November.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there was something that I was talking to Chris about, your sports information guy, and when him and I were talking about this off the air, I said it amazes me that people thought that SMU was gonna come into the ACC, be in the bottom, show that they don't belong, and I made a statement in the preseason. I said SMU may be better than you think, and you're probably going to need to maybe look out for them a little bit and don't think that they're the little brother coming into the ACC. Were you surprised that people had this notion of like, okay, SMU is going to come into the ACC and we're going to show them what power conference football is? Were you surprised to hear things like that?
Like I was surprised to hear anything. I mean, we had everything spanning from people thinking what you just said to, I mean, we had some people that were crazy predicting us to win it. And I was like, I thought that was just as crazy. I mean, in fairness to everybody, history tells you that when you make this jump, it takes a minute. Very rarely do teams even have a winning season, and definitely they've never had a winning record in their conference. And so, and the few schools that did have a good first season, I think a little over a decade ago, Utah and TCU had a winning season. The following years they struggle, and it just takes some time. I mean, it's just to get your roster, the depth, the week in, week out competition. At the same time, we hadn't proven that we had beaten a lot of power conference opponents in the couple years previous either. So I get it. But we felt like we had a team that could compete, and I think the ACC's got a lot of parity this year. I think it's really wide open. I think the top 8 to 10 teams, there's not a big gap. And so we're just fortunate to be in that group, and we've been playing some pretty good football.
Yeah, and you look at, there's a game I want to, the only loss that you have on the schedule so far, and I know you're hoping this is the only one you're going to have, but the BYU game that you played at home in Dallas, Texas, the game that was 18-15. I was watching this game from afar, and every time I saw your face, like I was telling you off the air, I know the man behind the music, so I'm looking at you and I'm like, he's got to be frustrated right now. Like that for both teams, it was like nobody could get into the end zone, and you would get so close, and you had 2 or 3 possessions down the stretch where it was like almost but not there. Bring me into that BYU game, because they're undefeated right now at the time we're talking. You only have one loss. Your loss was to the undefeated BYU, and yet this game was under 20, 18-15, and it seemed like at times pulling teeth for both teams to just get anything going offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, Kalani's got a great squad, and I think everyone sees that now. And we could feel it in that game. I think it was two really good defenses. I think our defense played definitely a winning performance, and no, I don't think BYU scored under 30 points since that game. And it was frustrating from our standpoint because while yes, that's a really good football team, and they've proven that since then. We felt like we did a whole lot more to lose that game than we did to make ourselves hard to beat. We had, to your point, we had a fumble at the 5 late, and we could have taken the lead. We threw an interception inside the 10. I think we only punted once or twice, and we didn't get in the end zone the whole game. Like, we moved the ball up and down the field, and we just didn't have a lot to show for it. That was also the game before we kind of made our decision at quarterback. So both of our quarterbacks were playing in the first half. It was hard to get in rhythm. But again, we played a winning performance on defense. We just kind of gave the game away offensively. And I think that's what was the most frustrating. But at the end of the day, that game helped us regroup as a unit, regroup as a team. We settled on our quarterback and offensive direction, and our team has really been playing with a lot of confidence ever since then.
You talk about in that game, you were still trying to figure out who your quarterback was going to be within the season. That was game three of your season, and it was still between Kevin Jennings and Preston Stone. Was that something that you were okay with? I mean, you go through camp and you're trying to figure things out. You go through spring ball, you go through fall ball, and some coaches, a lot of coaches in recent history, don't want to tell you who that guy is going to be. I think North Carolina, they had three guys going into the season with Mac Brown saying like, I don't know where I'm going to go. Duke having a couple guys, and so was that a situation that you were okay with to go into the season? And then when you got to game three, were you kind of like going to the offensive side of the ball and speaking to the coaches and going like, hey, like we're a quarter of the season in, like we got to figure out if it's Jennings or Stone. Bring me into kind of where you wanted to be and where things ended up.
That's a great question, and I mean, who knows what's right or wrong? That's why it's our job, I guess. I mean, going into the season, you always want to go into the season with that settled, and so you know, if we knew exactly the way it had, if it had played its way out already before the first game, then we would have done that. I mean, we had a unique situation in that we had a returning starter in Preston Stone who was 11-3 in his career as a starter, had just led us the year before. He had done nothing to lose his job. He had played well down the stretch before he got hurt. He had given a lot to this place. And, we all know, you can ask Derek King, our staff, everybody, like, you don't lose your job because of an injury if you haven't done something to lose your job. And he came back and had a solid summer and had a good fall camp. Then you have Kevin Jennings, someone we could see the potential. We could see the future of what we thought it could be. And he stepped in and won the conference championship game for us in his first career start.
Yeah.
He had a good spring, summer, and fall, but neither one of them had like won the job outright and obvious to our entire staff and to our team. And and Preston had not done anything to lose his job, and our team voted him both captains. So like the only thing that we knew or that I knew to do as a coach is let it play itself out, let them play, and as soon as it would reveal itself, that's what we would do. Always had an idea of what would happen, but I think that's the only fair thing to do is let the guys play it out. And in the first game of the year, Preston led a great comeback for us in the second half. But it was pretty clear at the end of the first quarter of that BYU game that it was not any one person's fault, but we were just moving the ball better with Kevin in the game. And I think so once we decided on that, it revealed itself on who was the best fit for this team. We were able to build an identity around what Kevin and this unit can do, and our guys have really taken off.
Rhett Lashlee here, SMU Mustangs head football coach, following an 8-1 start, 5-0 in the ACC in their first season in the ACC. We go back to your last season in the American, which was last year, 2023-24. You were undefeated, went 8-0 in the conference in regular season play, won the conference championship over Tulane, who was ranked at the time 22nd in the country, and won that AAC championship 26-14. So we see the fact of, if we go back to last year and we add it to this year, 14-0 in conference play. Does that have any validity to you? Does it mean anything to you because it was a different conference in the American than it is in the ACC? At the same time, we're talking about teams last year that came in to the American that weren't well known, right? They were realigning and whatnot. So you're playing a bunch of new teams that you hadn't necessarily been used to seeing all the time before, especially with you as the head coach at SMU. So last year in the American, you had a bunch of new. This year in the ACC, you have a bunch of new, and you have put together from last year to this year 9 wins plus the 5, giving you 14 straight conference wins between being an American member and an ACC member. What does that mean to this program, and how would you kind of define it, knowing that you're in a unique situation of being undefeated in conference play in 2 different conferences?
Yeah, I mean, just hearing you talk through that, it means a lot. And yes, it definitely matters a great deal. And just listening, I think we won our last regular season game my first year against Memphis. So if you count that, it's 15 straight if you count
Yeah.
the Tulane game. And
Yeah.
so I think that's just staggering to hear that number of what our guys have done. To go that long. We're talking November of 22 since we've lost a conference game. That's you know, in the American and now in the ACC, which is two of the top five conferences in America. I think that's a great testament to our coaching staff and our players. I mean, we don't talk about that stuff around here, but the more you win, then it comes up. So the last couple of weeks, people have been talking about that streak. I think when it was 12 or whatnot, we broke the school record. So then someone told us, and then I think right after we beat Louisville, someone let me know that us in Texas have the longest road winning streak in the country going on. Like it, our guys don't talk about that, but when you hear it, it just I think it shows we got a special group this year. The seniors, we have a veteran group. They've learned how to win, and I think they're 17-2 in their last 19 games. I saw, last year we won 11. They kind of came into this year and playing in a new league, and the first two conference games of the teams that played for it last year in Florida State and Louisville. Three of our first four games are on the road in the conference, and then our fifth game's against the top 20 team. And they just go play. They don't really get caught up in all that, and so yeah, I think it's a big deal. It's a big deal that to be able to span that success over time. I think this senior class we have, this veteran group, deserves a ton of credit.
Yeah, and you're right. If you go back to Saturday, November 26th, 2022, the 34-31 win over Memphis does give you technically 15 in a row conference wins,
Wow.
which is insane. Dating back to 2022, and here we are in 2024, almost 2 years into that streak. How do you put that all together? Because there's the transfer portal, there is, guys fighting for jobs. Like you said, you have that senior leadership, you have veterans that have been there, but culture is a big part of things, and the locker room is a big part of things. And I have been in collegiate locker rooms and I've been in professional locker rooms when it comes to the sport of football. And I can tell you in multiple sports actually, but I can tell you from my point of view that when I'm in a locker room of talented individuals, but there's viruses in there, that virus eventually creeps out and infects everybody. And then when you're in good culture locker rooms, there's something about the fact that even when they lose, they're on the verge of winning, they're on the way to winning. So, culture wise, to be 15-0 in conference play, to have that span almost 2 years now, to have it span two conferences, to have it span teams that are in states littered all over the country. Bring me into the culture of SMU, because there is no mistake of consistent positivity, consistent winning, consistent moves forward. You can have occasional greatness in with really anything, but this team has a level of consistency nationally that deserves a spotlight, and that plays into culture. And I'd love to get your thoughts on the culture of the Mustangs.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking it that way. And it's true. I mean, culture is a buzzword, but it matters. And, to me, your culture is only as good as the collection of people you have. And then to your point, from a consistency standpoint, what's important to you? And, when we got here 3 years ago, I believe life's about people and relationships. And so that's why you get into coaching anyways. Like, you can coach them as hard as you're willing to love them is something that I truly believe in. And, we hired a staff of men and women that care about the young men that we're leading. And then we tried to bring guys into this team that fit. And the first year, we went, 7-5. Okay. And then but going into the second year, I think that senior leadership that year, guys like Elijah Chapman and others, deserve a ton of credit for kind of setting the foundation for what we did. And we got on a winning streak. And then this year, when we had a lot of returners and brought in a lot of transfers, to your point, those transfers came in and they kind of conformed to what's going on here. And I think, look, nothing's perfect. You got NIL, you got transfer, everybody wants to play. Nothing's ever perfect, but we have a culture built on relationships. Our players know we care about them, and we're honest with them. So even sometimes if they're not happy or we're not telling them what they want to hear, they know we're honest with them. And so I think that has helped. And I think our players deserve credit for taking it and doing it. Like, you have to accomplish confidence. You have to accomplish winning consistently to make winning a habit. And I thought Kobe Wilson, our linebacker who transferred here a year ago, from Temple. So now he's in his second year with us. He said it this way about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I hadn't thought of it this way, but he just said, "Man, I think we hate losing more than we like winning." And our guys are happy. They enjoy being together. Again, every day's not perfect. And I think what Kobe said was never more evident in that Duke game, where Duke deserved to win that game just as much as we did, maybe more. But our guys just kept playing and found a way to get the victory. So our guys enjoy playing together. They have fun. They're happy. The amount of guys that have either been here, like Isaiah Wacobia through and Roderick Daniels since they came out of high school, but all these transfers, they just say, "Man, coach, we're so happy here. The culture's great. We're so glad we came here." And I think happy people win more.
Yeah, and I mean, you said something. You said you're all about relationships, and when you said it, I'm nodding because I know that personally from you. I get to talk to a lot of coaches. We've had a lot of people here on the show over the years, and I pay very close attention to who you are. Not just are you winning, not just, oh, do they say, the right stuff, this and that when the cameras are on, but I look at who's physically really truly building a relationship. And I want to let you know this because I'm thankful for it, and I hope you don't mind me sharing it. But you and I have built a bond off the air as well. And less than an hour and a half before your game time that you just had against Pittsburgh, I shot you a text message and you answered me back. And I actually called up my parents and I was like, it's guys like Rhett that make me feel like I'm doing something good in this world. It's guys like Rhett that like make me feel appreciated. And those are people that you really can't help but root for and want to see the best for, because here you are. I'm like, he's probably in the locker room right now, getting ready, doing things. And he took the time to say, thanks, Dan. So I wanted to put that out, and I hope you don't mind that I did put that personal back and forth message out, because it speaks to your character, it speaks to your personality, and it just means a lot to me. It shows me that no matter how successful you've become and how many things that are going well with the team this season, you still treat me the same way you treated me when I met you a few years ago.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and you know, none of us are perfect, but that's what we try to do. I believe that. I think life's about people and relationships, and I think most of us if we don't take ourselves too seriously, we understand. We're only where we are at times by the grace of God and the good people around us, and so appreciate you.
No, absolutely. So before we get into a couple things here, we're going to play rapid fire and put me on the hot seat because you've been asked a lot of questions, Coach. So you're going to get to ask me some questions. But
I'm always terrible at that.
no, you do well with it. You're good with it. But I want to get into you on the sideline. I made mention of it a little while ago, but when you're walking up and down there, you have no idea what the commentators are saying. You have no idea, what the stories they're telling, or I just talked to coach at halftime or whatever that may be. So in crunch time, and you've had crunch time in a lot of these games, you had that 18-15 game against BYU. You had the one possession game at Louisville. You had the overtime game at Duke. So there's been moments this season in that close game against Nevada as well. So what is actually going through the mind of Rhett Lashlee down the stretch, fourth quarter, in overtime, when we're seeing that face? Because you're like expressionless. It's very hard to read if you don't know your personality a little bit. I can make a guess of what I think, and honestly, I feel like I should have put up different faces of you, and I should have been like, this is what I think Rhett Lashlee's thinking, and then you could say right or wrong, and I could hit the buzzer. But what are you thinking in those crunch time moments on the sideline as people are speaking for you, going, this is what's on Rhett's mind right now?
Well, I don't know, a variety of things. It depends on the moment. Like if it's the Duke game from about 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I was probably thinking about all the ways that we've just given this game away. And, oh, wow, we turned it over again. Probably what everybody else was thinking, to, just in disbelief of Jafari's great play to block the kick, to then us scoring, to then the 2-point play. I waited for about 3 to 5 seconds to make sure there's no flags at the end, and then I was just thinking, can't believe we just won that game, and it's really not fair that Manny has to lose that game, and so it's all different. I think for me, I definitely lose it a lot more when maybe the game isn't close. Like I got in trouble with the wife and my daughters at the Stanford game because I got pretty ticked off in the second half and we're up like 30. But um, I think some of it helps because two things. One, I'm a former quarterback. I played, and so as a quarterback, you get used to you just got to go to the next play. Something really good happens, something really bad happens. Like you got to have passion, and so if something really good happens, you get excited for a minute, and then you got to. I mean, the next play is all that matters. And if something bad happens, you still got to go play the next play. But also as the head coach and the guy calling plays, you got to stay present. Because you got to call plays, but then also like I've always believed this about leadership like your body language is more important than what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so for example, if I'm going to tell Kevin or our quarterback, man, leadership is like when things are going crazy, good, bad, in between, it doesn't matter. Our guys are going to look at you. What do they see? And that's important. And that they see consistency, they see confidence. That doesn't mean everything's perfect. That doesn't mean you have it all together underneath. And if I'm going to ask the quarterback to do that or our coaches to do that, then I have to do that. And so I don't know. I think just from doing it as a player and a coach over the years, you learn, man, I got to stay present in the moment. But don't worry, inside, we're probably thinking all the things that everyone else is thinking, like this is not good, or anything in between. Um, but you're usually trying to figure out how to solve the problem that's still ongoing.
And you said, coach, you said not only are you the head coach, but you're calling plays. Do you like that scenario? Do you like being in that type of situation where, I mean, you're the head coach, so you're overseeing everything in the world we live in today. You're a general manager, you're a father figure, you're like an uncle to some of these guys. And at the same time, you have to do all the leadership things that a head coach does. Plus, you have to add in that management side to it. And then on the calling plays side, you're asking even more of yourself. How do you navigate through that? And do you like being in that type of situation?
Well, I navigate through it because we got a great staff offensively that I've been with for a long time. I mean, like our run game plan against Pittsburgh, I thought was really good. And Garen Justice and Kyle Cooper and Casey Woods, they deserve all the credit for that. I'm just the guy maybe calling the play, and De'Aaron King getting a guy like Kevin to bounce back from that Duke game and Rob Likens and what he's done with our guys on the outside in the passing game. Like we got a good group of guys that I've been with long enough. Like we know each other, and so you couldn't do it, I don't think, as a head coach without a great support group on that offensive staff. We do it together. There's things I like, and there's things I don't. I don't like the prep during the week just because it's so much and it's a grind and you're solving the problem, and then Friday night at the hotel, it's like you're cramming for a test because you're getting your mind ready to call the game as a play caller, not just be at the game as the head coach. So that's where you get tired as a head coach when you're doing it all, in terms of being the head coach, worrying about the whole team, but also trying to call the offense and all that. But because we have a great staff, it's doable. But I tell you what you do love is on game day, you feel like you're in it with the guys. Like you're in the fight. And when it's good and when it's bad, you're in it with them and they know you're in it with them. And you feel connected to the guys during the game instead of walking around and just saying, punt, go for it. Like, no, you're in it. And I think it helps. I think that helps probably more than anything, stay calm. Because if things are going really bad, you have to be thinking, okay, well, how are we going to dig out of this? You can't be losing your mind and throwing a fit and all that. You have to go try to solve the problem. And that's all you're constantly doing. But I just love the connection with the guys because I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't involved in that because that's why you coach. And so, look, I've said it every year. As long as I think that me calling plays is what gives us the best chance to win, I'm going to do it. In the moment I don't think that, I'll let someone else do it. But I just like that. I like being in it with the guys, and I like the guys knowing that I'm in it with them.
Do you think that Kevin Jennings likes the fact that you're in his head and in his ear all the time?
You need to ask him that question. I think I'm doing a good job, but I also think I'm doing a good job with my wife at home, and she could probably tell you the 30 things I need to get better at. So um, I'm sure there's some times he'd be like, man, if I had a mute button, this would be good. But I've done my best, and that was my goal from the beginning, is to not talk too much. Like, for the most part, give them the play, maybe give them one thought, and let them play. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get in their head and overcoach and over communicate, and now they're bogged down and they can't play. And so for the most part, I just give them the play. Every now and then I might be, hey, second and short.
Yeah.
And I don't tell him what to do because it's second and short. I'm just reminding him it's second and short, or hey, we got two downs here, or hey, be smart with the football. That's it. You know what I mean? And let him play. At least I think I'm doing okay, but we'd have to ask him.
No, you're definitely doing a good job. And right before we get into rapid fire, Rhett Lashlee, SMU Mustangs head football coach, following the 8-1 start, 5-0 in the first year in the ACC. The Pitt game, when we look at Pittsburgh and what Pitt's been doing here this season, a week before they played you, they blew out Syracuse at home. And then you go into a game against them, and this game was 48-11, I believe, before it ended 48-25. Just what you could say. I mean, this Pittsburgh came in undefeated. They came in having a really great season, a really strong season, and they found out at the beginning of the season that they were going to be without a player, and they responded to that in such a tremendous way. I know Pat Narduzzi. I've known him the whole time he's been at Pitt. How do you take a team that Syracuse is now 6-2? Syracuse is no slouch. How do you take a team that blew out Syracuse, and then the next week you take it to an undefeated Pitt and score almost 50 on them after coming off of an overtime victory at Duke? I mean, how did you just kind of turn it around like that, win a close game at Duke, and then do to Pitt what Pitt did to Syracuse?
Yeah, well, you're right about Pat. I mean, Pat and I were talking before the game. He's been there a decade. That's just incredible consistency. And, if you take this year, 3 of the last 4 years, I mean, he's going to win about 30 games in those 4 years. So, I mean, he's done a really good job there. And defensively, everybody knows his reputation. And so, I think I'm kind of in awe of our players, if I'm being honest. We hadn't been home for a game since September 28th. It'd been 6 weeks. And sometimes you work there if they're over amped up for that, man, they were fired up to be home, and they played that way from start to finish. I think, you know, our staff did a great job at having ready. I think it was big that we went down and scored on the opening drive. Just it settled everyone down. I think it probably was good for Kevin, coming off the Duke game. We all felt like Kevin was going to play great. We didn't really have any reservations about it, but he still had to go do it. And then, man, our defense was the story of that game. Yeah, we scored 48 points, and we ran the ball really well against a team that usually stops the run well, which allowed us to still throw for 300. But like, to your point now, they had scored 3 times on defense the week before, and we had just been a turnover machine the week before. But for our defense to, I mean, it was 31-3 at half. Their offense was scoring 40 points a game. Through 3 quarters, they had 3.5 quarters, they had 11 points. I think our defense was the difference because it allowed us offensively to just play good balanced football, to run the football, to not press, and therefore we didn't turn it over. So it was a big deal, for our guys to play the way they did in a big moment like that against a really good team.
Well, you get to answer the questions all the time. On this show, I put myself on the hot seat. So final couple are going to come from you. What questions you got for me?
All right. Is it okay to start playing Christmas music before Thanksgiving?
No.
We're in agreement there. Will the ACC get multiple teams in the playoff?
Oh man, I had this conversation. I had a conversation to start this week on Wake Up Call, and I will tell you this, Coach. I take 4 commercial breaks typically. I did not take a commercial break for an hour and 40 minutes because I was arguing with the person that was on my show, Brendan Murphy. Shout out to Brendan. We were having an argument about who I believe should be in, and the fact that the Big Ten has not done anything to prove that they get 4 in. And if SMU doesn't get in, I was like, if SMU will win the championship, like if it's them in Miami and talk about that, like wherever they end up, there's no world where I don't see, if you continue to do what you need to do for the next 3 games against BC, at Virginia, and then against Cal, there's no world where I think SMU hasn't earned the right to be in. So I was heavily arguing you yesterday, earlier this week, just so you know.
Appreciate that. Can you think of one good argument why it shouldn't be a 16-team playoff instead of 12?
Talked about that on yesterday's show as well. I think it should be a 16-team playoff. You being inside of the American Athletic fully understand the level of disrespect that's there. And Boise State is having themselves a tremendous season, but at the same time, there are other teams that have earned the right to be in this. I think it should be 16. The only reason why I'm okay with 12 is because it wasn't 4. But in my mind, I argued 16 multiple times, and I argued 16 to start off the week this week. So I do believe there should be 16. And in no way, shape, or form do I think that this should become a 2-conference playoff where they're taking the bulk of the spots. I think the whole point of expanding the playoff is giving all of the conferences representation. And I think that the ACC, it's been shown that there's a disrespect for the ACC, hence why Miami is not even 2 right now, which doesn't make any sense. So in my opinion, the ACC should have more respect, not just because I cover the conference, but because I see the level of play. And I would fully anticipate and hope that the committee makes the right decision and bare minimum puts 2 ACC teams into the college football playoff this year.
I get more questions. Is that it? Or?
No, that's it. You got it. So you got it. But great questions. Rhett Lashlee, as always, SMU Mustangs head football coach. And beyond everything, coach, it's good to see a good man who's trying to do things the right way succeed. And just so you know what you already do know, watching from afar and having the opportunity to see you do the things that you set forward to do after all the conversations we've had, it really does warm the heart. And, you know, I respect you. And I'm always happy to see this team have success because I know that there's a good heart in this program. And they say if you do it with pure heart and good intentions, you can't fail. So it's been good to see the story so far.
Thanks, Dan, man. I appreciate you and just appreciate what you do for our great game.